This is chapter number 12, India after independence. So, India got independence on 15th August 1947. So, there were partition. Pakistan, this was made as West Pakistan, this was East Pakistan. These are all Muslim majority places. Now, the independence we got 15th August 1947. Please remember, the Independence Day we celebrate on 15 August. 15 August. The 26th January is the Republic Day. I'll talk about that in a short while. So, when we got independence, the life was not very easy. It was a new country, poor country, undeveloped country. So we were facing a lot of challenges. First of all, the partition came with a lot of problem. There were riots, there were refugees. So around 8 million, see 1 million is 10 lakh. So 8 million refugees, they came to India from Pakistan. So can you imagine the number of people at that time? Now all these have to be given homes. They have to give provided with jobs. That is, they have to have a life here, and that the government has to ensure. There was another situation, because all more than 500 princely states were there, riyasatein, princely states, and these states were either ruled by some Maharaja, or by some Nawab or some leader. So all these have to be requested or persuaded or annexed to join this new nation called India, called Hindustan, called Bharat. So they have to be brought inside this nation. So these all were in front of us. Now, since the independence, there were so many people who have their desire, their thoughts, expectation. So we have to have a political system, we have to develop a political system. All the requirement, expectation, thoughts of people have to be fulfilled. They have to be best served, because all were involved, all sect of life, all religion, all caste, creed, they were involved in independence, getting independence. So this is the picture of 15th August 1947, the flag hoisting ceremony at Red Fort, the historical Red Fort. Today also the Prime Minister, they do it. So 1947, if I talk to you about that time, the population was quite high. Though today also it's 138 crores. So 345 million, 1 million is 10 lakh, that is 34.5 crores population was there at time. And this was related to other country, it was huge. And there was a quite divide. See, low castes were there, high castes were there. So people were divided into low caste and high caste. Majority, if you see, 81% are Hindus. So there were Hindus, Muslims, Parsis, Sikh, Jain. So there were various division in terms of religion. So division in terms of caste, division in terms of religion, and the language. The Punjab, people were speaking Punjabi. The Tamil Nadu region, they were speaking Tamil. The food, different food. Sometimes, somewhere people eat non-veg, somewhere they don't touch non-veg, non-vegetarian. And there are dresses. Kashmir, they wear everything, because it's cold area. South India, they just wear white clothes. So, and the profession also. In the coastal areas, there were fishermen. In the forest land, there were different kind of people. So these kind of difference, they are huge. The diversity was immense everywhere. If you go, people say that you walk and the water will change. You walk and the language will change. This is India. So how to make them live together in one nation state, one India, one Bharat. Okay. So at independence, what happened? What we encountered was most of the people were living, or most of the population was living in the villages, gaon, the rural areas. So rural areas, they were farmers, they were peasants, they were normal workers, artisans. So at that time we were not so advanced. Everything was dependent on monsoon. The agriculture, we were basically the agriculture country, and we are all dependent on monsoon. So when the monsoon is there, if it doesn't come, what will happen? So all the farm sector, that is the agriculture sector, and the non-agriculture sector, that is the non-farm sector of the rural economy, it was entirely dependent on the monsoon. And even the agriculture is the primary sector. The other one are the secondary sector. So if the primary sector is affected, the secondary sector will be affected, and all the people who are dependent on us, like the barber, carpenters, weavers, all these will be in a problem of livelihood. They will not get paid. How would they live? So this is about the villages. If I take you to say the factory workers, actually I'm talking about the cities. So factory workers, they lived in crowded slums. Means if you see today also we have Dharavi, Asia's biggest slum. All this was created because of the factories only. So the big cities like Surat and Ahmedabad and Bombay and the Calcutta, they were divided, they were filled with slums. So there were no access to education or healthcare in these slums. Okay? So the situation was grim. And the poverty was there. People were poor. Most of the people were poor. I'm not saying all, but people were poor. So the country has to be uplifted from this poverty, being poor. And also agriculture productivity has to be increased so that people can eat. And then people have to be given job. In order to give them job, we need to promote the new industries. So new industries, new udyog have to be established. So in order to create jobs, there are so many things needs to be done. Right? Industries, agriculture, emancipation. Okay? So all these things which I am talking about, the first thing I was talking about the diversity. So we needed unity. And the second part which I discussed was about development. So unity and development has to go hand in hand. They are not different things. They are basically complementary. Or you can say, to be very precise, they are supplementary. So division, if anything happens, because there was a divide, and their divide was for almost decades, years, right? So we are sitting on the piece of, say, a fire where only a one lit can just create fire. Because everywhere there was some or the other situation happening. People can fight, because if people are poor, they are not economically strong, they will just fight. They are not educated, they will fight. Right? So these kind of conflicts can be very costly in a newborn country. And what we saw here is that whatever has to be done, we need to make poor as rich, not rich as more rich. Today also we have the richest person of our country. He became the fourth richest person of world few months back. Ambani, Adani, these guys, they in 1 second they earns in crores. So this still is going on. So now coming to the constitution. So Indian constitution, what you see here is the book, the constitution, the Bible of India, and this is the preamble. It says everyone is equal. All the words which is there is properly written here in a good manner, so that people can understand and we know how this country has to be marked and followed. So December 1946 till 1949. So December 1946, the country was not independent. So around 380 or 350 plus people, they sat together from different political parties, from different cities, different country, this part of the country. So they were sitting, and this committee or assembly was called as Constituent Assembly, Samvidhan Sabha. But in 1947 there was partition. So this 380, 350 plus, to be very precise, it became 300. Actually it's 280 plus. So in order to have a proper numeral number so that we remember, make it as 300. So they were discussing about what will be the political future, how the India as a country will be guided, who is going to guide them. This constitution is going to guide them. So December 1946 to November 1949 is around 3 years. It's 2 years, 11 months and some days, say 8 days. Okay. So for almost 3 years, they were discussing, they were deliberating, they were having discussion, debates, everything was going on. All over participants which have come from all over part of the country. So these participants, as I said, they have different thoughts. They're coming from different caste, creed, religion, background. They are having a different cadre in every aspect. So now there is, again, people are sitting as united with diversity. So now they made a constitution, they framed a constitution. And this was adopted, lagu kiya gaya. This was adopted by the country on 26 January 1950. Please remember, 26 January is our Republic Day, when the constitution was adopted. But 15 August is our Independence Day, when we got our freedom. 26 January is not Freedom Day. 26 January is just the Constitution Adoption Day. Here we have the parade. You know, in 1929, Indian National Congress, Nehru ji, he was the president of INC, he said, on 26 January 1930, we are going to celebrate the Independence Day. That is how the confusion is. So, finally, this 26 January was adopted from that date. So, 26 January, Republic Day. 15 August, Independence Day. Right? This question is generally asked. Okay. So, now coming to the constitution. Now, our constitution is very rich. Everything is there. Basically, we took all the good contents from different countries and then we adopted them, adapted them. We adopted and adapted also to our natural needs as a country. So, this is how the whole constitution was made. So some salient feature you need to remember, 3 of them we are going to take. The salient feature of this constitution is, first of all, it is a written constitution. It's a proper written constitution. It is the longest and lengthiest constitution. See, it is saying the democratic form, Loktantrik Vyavastha, sovereignty, Samprabhu of people. There is no foreign intervention. Parliamentary form of government, we have Rajya Sabha and the Lok Sabha, right? So it's a parliamentary form of government. State representation is also there and the other representation is also there. Then we have the elections also, right? Then fundamental rights and fundamental duties and directive principles. These are also given, that what is individual duty, what are the rights individual has. The constitution is quite flexible also, rigid also. And then we talk about the single citizenship. We do have OCI cards, etc., overseas citizenship card, etc. Preventive detention is still there. That is, if the police or the government sees that he or she is a threat, he can be detained, and this is very dangerous actually. People are still debating on this. A secular state, there is no religion, no Hindu, no Muslim, all are equal in front of law, in front of a constitution. See, government has no religion. They cannot promote or they cannot talk even about any religion. Independent judiciary. That is, there are three pillars of our constitution, this democracy. Judiciary and legislative, and the one more, Karyapalika. Adult suffrage, everyone was given the right to vote. Every Indian, if he or she is adult, he can give the vote, adult suffrage, right? Sarvabhaumik adhikar, matadhikar. So now the 3 salient features we are going to discuss about the constitution. One of the important feature is universal adult franchise, which we just talked about, 14th point. Universal adult franchise, that is, at that time the constitution came, all the Indians who are 21 plus, all the Indian citizens 21 plus. So either state election or state or say any election, national election, the main is that they can give vote. And in Indian constitution only this was given to everyone, right? And it was not even given to the big countries, developed countries, the United Kingdom, the America, the US. India was the only main country or the key country who was given right at the first constitution by itself. So in United States, if I give you the idea, the first people who got the right was only having the property, those who were having the property. Then those who were educated given the right to vote. Then the working class has to really fight. They have to struggle for getting this right to vote. And finally, the women, they put up a good fight and struggle. Then only they were given the right to vote. So India was a class apart. Soon we got the independence. All Indians, the Vyask, adult Indians, they got this right to vote. And there was no distinction, no gender, no class, no education distinction. Everyone can vote, right? So this is one of the important salient feature of our constitution. So I'll show you this, the picture of Samvidhan Sabha, the Constituent Assembly. You see here Jawaharlal Nehru Sahab, and he is introducing the resolution that outlined the objectives of the constitution. And all these people sitting here, they are all the members of this Constituent Assembly. So it was a long deliberation, discussion which happened, Okay. So the second feature, what was this? So we have the Muslims, the Parsis, the Hindus. There are so many. Hindus are majority basically, others are minority. Hindus are more than 80% in India. Now in a constitution, in front of law, every citizen, each citizen is equal. Okay? 81% Muslims, Hindus are there, only 14% Muslims. And if you see a good Hindu, he will always respect every religion. A Hindu religion is that religion which imbibes, which adopts every kind of different thoughts. You go to Sri Lanka, Sinhala, they didn't allow Tamilians to even grow. If you go to Pakistan, then they just push this Urdu. That is why East Pakistan became Bangladesh later. So this India has, the Hindu Dharma is a very great Dharma. But there are good people, there are bad people. There are people who said that now you have to make this as a Hindu state because Pakistan was already taken. Pakistan was made for the betterment of, for the expectation, to fulfill the expectation of whom? For Pakistan, for Muslims. Now this is India is a Hindu country now. Make it as Hindu. Okay. Because only the Muslim interest is undertaken by making this East Pakistan and West Pakistan. But the Nehru kind of people, the great people, the visionary people, they said no. India is university and in diversity. Diversity and unity go in hand. We have different people who have worked hard for years and for our independence, for making this country what we are. We have to respect everyone. So we can make this as a Hindu Pakistan. Okay. In India, we have around 14% these Muslims. Sikhs around 1-2%, Christians 1-2%. So they all work together to make this country what we are. Parsis, Jain, they are big shots, they are so respected. Sikhs, they are everywhere. They are strengthening this country. And then everyone loves their country. So constitution is giving everything what a Hindu can get. So Hindus, every minority is getting everything what a Hindu is getting in this country. So we have different castes, different creed, different everything, diversity. But this constitution ensures that whatever Hindus are getting, everyone should get. Same opportunities, either in the government jobs, either in the private sector, or whichever opportunity you talk about. Constitution says equal for everyone. There is no Hindu Raj, there is no Hindutva, there is nothing in Constitution says. There is third feature. The third feature is about the people who are poor and who are destitute, who are disadvantaged, who have suffered a lot. Okay, so the constitution has made the provisions about them also. See, untouchability, achut. Because of this word, this practice, India was defamed all over. This was a slur and a blot on the fair name of India. India is a great country. This was the achut or untouchability practice was abolished under the law, under the constitution, right? The Hindu temples, big temples which were not open for others, for the lower caste, it was the door were open for everyone. Now anyone can go and worship. So if you talk about the state legislature, central legislature, or the government jobs, how to ensure all this? To make everyone equal. Government jobs, the state legislature or the central legislature, the SC, ST and OBCs, they were given the reservation. There was a provision of reservation. Why? Because most of them, the Constituent Assembly members also, they were saying that these untouchables or Harijan or Dalit, all these are created because of the upper caste. They were not getting enough grade or marks so that they can become an IAS or get a government job. So Khandekar, he was also from this caste, lower caste, and he said that upper caste are the sole responsible for what we are today, for the Harijans. Why we are unfit today? Just because the upper caste has made us like this. What he has said, let me read it for you. He said that we were suppressed for years. We were doing your service. We were suppressed by you. Neither our mind or bodies can develop. Our heart is not also working so that we can move forward. We don't have any motivation or the energy. How can we move forward? So that is why this reservation was given. So not only the scheduled caste, the Anusuchit Jati, but this was given, this Adivasis, the scheduled tribes we call them, they were also given the reservation. The Adivasis were also deprived, first by the people and then the Britishers. So they were discriminated, they were deprived, they were not given proper opportunities, they were not given the health and education. Okay. So this is what they didn't get. So they also faced the same scenario what the Harijans were getting. So ultimately what happened? This SC, ST were deprived and others, they prospered. They got whatever they wanted. So 15%, if I give you the formation, 15% around scheduled caste, around 27% for other backward classes, around 7.5%, 7+% is for scheduled tribes. That is, if say 100 people are coming, 15 will be from the scheduled caste. Their seats are reserved. They got the reservation. Okay. So now the Constituent Assembly, it spent almost 3 years discussing various matters. What will be the political status, structure and future of India? As I was saying that there are around 500 princely states who are headed by or governed by either the Nawabs or the Sardars, the Rajas. So the government, the state government, basically if they are trying to get all these provinces, the different princely state, there will be different states and then they will be inside a union which is our country, central government. So what will be the power of state and union government? So what will be the power difference? So someone was saying that the union government or central government should be given more power. They have to take the whole country as a whole. So in order to think country as a whole and well-being of a country, the center power, the union power should be higher or should be the extreme as compared to the state government power. Now many of them were thinking that the provinces, the states, they are important.
For example, just imagine a scenario that you are a kid and you have fever. Who is going to take you to the doctor? Your brother or your father will take you to the doctor. Okay, the other person from the other state will not come. Right? You will only go to them when there is no one at your place. So, these situations you need the nearest ones, the people who are nearest to you. So the state government there should be state government who should look after their people, the people who are speaking the same language, the people who are having same religion, caste, creed, all these things are important. So provinces should be given more autonomy and more freedom. That is, they have to be given more power as compared to the central government. Because one of the person or one of the member of this Constituent Assembly from Mysore, he was saying that everything is centered at Delhi. Democracy is centered at Delhi. What will happen to us? What about the country as a whole? Because Delhi, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, they are so far apart. Even if you go to the northeast, there is a huge difference of distance, and distance always means there is a means. At that time, there were no communication like this. And there was a member from Madras, right? He said that the initial responsibility of well-being of the people should rest with the provincial government, should rest with the government who are owning or who are governing the state, right? So many thoughts were there. Everyone was having their different thought. So because of this, there has to be, states were asking something, the union government also, people were saying that they should be given power. So there has to be some balance. So the constitution, in order to maintain this balance, they created 3 lists: union list, state list, and concurrent list. These are 3 separate lists, and this divided the powers, the area, the regimes of different government. What kind of the law can a government can make, which government can make which law, which government cannot make which law, right? Who should not be interested in whom. These all list is very important. Say the union list, and this union list we also call it as a central list. For example, we have a Modi government right now. It's a union government. So union list has subjects of national importance. If you go to Rajasthan, it's a Congress government right now. 2021. It's a state list. So union list has subjects of whole nation importance as a country. So national importance, the subjects are there. Vishay. For example, the union can make law on defense. See, if there is an adversary country, it will not only affect one state. They will not say, I'll go to Mizoram and then attack. Banking, whole country as a whole, the currency has to be same, the banking structure has to be same. And when we talk about different countries, we have to deal with them as a single country. So there has to be a foreign affair. Gujarat is not going to talk to Sindh. India has to talk to Pakistan, right? And the communication, everyone, people are getting married, people are getting jobs here and there all over India. So this is a communication becomes so important here. So this all will be under union list. What about state list? There are subjects which are important locally, or you can say they are of state importance. For example, the police. See, if 2 people are fighting, who is going to come? The local police will come. CRPF is not going to come. CISF is not going to come. The border force is not going to come. Okay. So the local police, CBI is not going to come, of course. The local police should be in the hand of the state. If someone gets ill or some problem is there, the state has to take care. So the education, I'll just give an example. Surat, there are diamond work. If you go to say Odisha, maybe they might be working in fishing industry or somewhere else. So these are different state. The kind of trade, the kind of commerce, the agriculture, because the environment is different, the monsoon is different, the climatic conditions are different. All these are to be tackled and handled by the state. because there is a variety of state having different kind of environment, the monsoon, the people, the eating habit, the dressing habit, the festivals also are different. So state government has to work on it. When we talk about concurrent list, this is a common list. Means both the governments can make law on this, and the union government, the law always supersede the state government law. For example, education, forest is everywhere. Trade, the foreign trade, the adoption and the succession means getting married, how a person will give their kids the money or their property, all these. So tax, defense, foreign affairs, these are big things pertaining to whole country. So they will come in the union list. Okay. The state list, especially the police, the education and health. So this will come in state. And then, as I said just now, there are certain list of content like Vishay, subject, forest and agriculture. Both the center and states will have the joint responsibility. That is why we are calling it as a concurrent list, right? Now all this discussion was happening, and he is Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Sahab. We are going to talk about him just now. He was from 1891 to 1956. He was respectfully called as Baba Saheb. He came from a very Dalit family called Mahar family. He's the person. And he is one of the greatest, Dalit leader. And he was not only a lawyer, he was also knowing the economy. So he was a great lawyer as well as economist. And he was, as I said, there are various, Dalit leaders. He is one of them. And he can be conferred as a, kind of Periyar, etc. And he was the father of Indian Constitution. How he was the father of Indian Constitution, I'll just come to that. But before that, language is very, it's very close to people's heart. So people were saying in a Constituent Assembly, English should be thrown away with Britishers. We don't want English. And people said, let's have Hindi. But the problem is, if you are from Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, say a little bit of Bengal, some little bit of Haryana or Punjab or Uttarakhand, little bit, or Himachal. Now these all states, if you are born, you will understand that everyone is speaking Hindi. But if you go to Maharashtra, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Malayalam, northeastern state, even Jammu Kashmir, people not speaking Hindi. They have their own language. Say Tamil Nadu, nobody will speak Hindi. If you are speaking Hindi, they will say, why are you not speaking Tamil? Same, this is a logic. Why they should learn Hindi? You should learn Tamil, no? So there was a thing, as related to the language. So Krishnamachari, he didn't argued. He actually gave the warning. Constituent Assembly member. He said, if you do anything with the language, if you want to force Hindi on us, we are going to get separated from India. That is my warning. Okay? And this was a big statement to make. So this, language is very close to people, like the religion is. So there was a compromise. Finally, it was being decided that Hindi will be the official language. That is, it will be a Raj Bhasha, not Rashtra Bhasha. It will not be the nation's language. It will only be a Raj Bhasha, not the Rashtra Bhasha. Clear? Hindi, just you want to speak, you speak. You don't want to, no problem. This was, Hindi would be the official language of India. Okay? It will never be imposed on anyone. Southern India will never accept it. See, a few months back, Amit Shah, he is a very powerful man. He is the Home Minister of India right now. And he just said about this language, and one day he has to track back. Because, if you talk about Hindi in South, people get angry. they said the English can be used in codes, services, communication between the states and other states. So now Hindi will be the official language and English can be the communication language. So I was talking about B.R. Ambedkar Sahab. He had a very important role. He played a very important role in the constitution. Basically, he was the chairman of the drafting committee, Prarup Samiti. And under his supervision, this constitution as a whole, department as a book, it was being finalized. That is, whatever we see today, he was the key person who actually recommended it and forwarded it. So this all is okay. But the problem is he was coming from Mahar Jati. He was coming from Dalit community. Though he was a very successful lawyer and he was renowned, reputed as all that thing is there. But the problem is he knew what is exactly going in the society. Actual ground level, what is the situation of, because if you are talking about political system, political, what about you are talking about political democracy, he knows that what about the cultural democracy, what about the social democracy. Just giving the right to people that okay, come and vote and just be happy. What about the inequalities? The rich is going richer, the poor is getting poorer, the upper caste and lower caste divide is ever increasing, right? So he was aware of that. He was, though he was the formulator, articulator, he was everything. But what he said was that with this constitution, we are going into contradictions. That in politics, we are saying equality, social equality, the economic equality. That is, when we are going to just say that we are going to give one vote and the right to people, we have to see that this happens on the ground also. Economically, socially, people have to be strong. We have to make them strong. That is, we have to see about the whole development of a single person. Either he is from any caste, creed, religion, especially from the destitute classes, the disadvantaged classes. This is what he said. Now, coming to how were states to be formed. Now, here is a very interesting story. There are two people whom I am going to name a lot. He is our first Prime Minister of Free India. He is the Deputy Prime Minister. One is Nehru Sahab, the other is Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. He was not, Sardar was the upadhi given to him. Now, this is a picture of Indian National Congress 1885 where it was formulated. It was way back, around 70 people, they gathered all over India under A.O. Hume and Dadabhai Naoroji. And Indian National Congress is responsible for our independence also. So I am talking about 1920s when it was all Indian National Congress. It was doing everything for the independence. So at this time, Indian National Congress, they promised everyone that whenever we are going to get the independence, we are going to give all the people who are from the same linguistic community, that is people speaking the same language, we are going to give them their own provinces, their state. So 1947, 15 August 1947, we get the independence. Now the Congress, which is headed by, of course, Nehru Sahab and the Patel Sahab, they were not doing anything for this promise. They were even not thinking about that promise. So people thought, what? If somebody comes to you and he says that I'll give you 2 crores employment, I'll give you 15 lakh in your account, and he is not fulfilling, what will you say? Oh, why are you not fulfilling your promise? You said and we gave you vote. So this is how thing happened. So now the problem was, because what is the perspective of Nehru and Patel? See, Indian Pakistan was made because of the religion, and millions were killed because of the riots, because of the various things, and there was a great divide between now Hindu and Muslims before as ever. So now you are thinking this kind of difference or partition can be done with respect to or in terms of language? Are we ready? Are we ready for another riots? Are we ready for another divide which has already happened in the partition? So both the Prime Minister Nehru and Deputy Prime Minister Vallabhbhai Patel, hey, they were against this linguistic state, that is the states on the basis of a language, okay, because they have already seen the partition or division. So Nehru Sahab was saying there are people who are bad people and they are just trying to divide our country. So we have to get together, we have to be strong. So they are disruptionist tendencies, means people who are trying to break this country. So we have to be together. So in order to be together, we cannot think about linguistic kind of division. We cannot have the states divided in terms of their languages. And same thing Patel Sahab also said. What Patel Sahab said? Patel Sahab said that this moment we have to think about a nation, right? We have to do everything for the nationalism. We have to go forward. All the obstacles like these linguistic provinces and whatever people are asking, we need to reject them. We cannot support this kind of opinion that give us a state because we speak the same language. But you know that people, if you are being said that you are going to get 2 crores every month job and you are not getting a job, you will get angry some of the other time. This is the disappointment. People will cater. So what happened? Especially because everyone, Kannada, Malayali, Marathi, they were all looking forward that they will get their own state. Right? Everyone was thinking that we will get our own state because the Indian National Congress and the national leaders have promised us. But now the national leaders are denying us. So the protest started. And when the protest started, and especially everywhere the protest started, but the main protest started was at the Telugu speaking district in Madras presidency. There were 4 presidencies, if you remember. In the Madras presidency, the Telugu speaking district, here everything was going on. So here when Nehru went there in 1952 for the general election campaign, he was shown black flags. He was greeted with a slogan that we want Andhra, Nehru hi hi, all these kind of people were protesting. They were trying to tell that we want our Telugu speaking state. Okay. So this is what people were saying, and they were trying to show it to the government also. So what happened? There was a key figure, Potti Srimalu. Please remember Potti Sri Ramalu. Potti Sri Ramalu. He was a Gandhiwadi leader. Gandhiwadi leader, Gandhian ideas means he will do the Anshan, he will do the Dharna, he will not eat anything and he will not do any hinsa. He will not do any violence. He will just sit and ask for satyagraha. So he started this hunger fast, hunger strike he started. So he didn't eat or drink. And there were so many people who were with him, and all the hartals and bandh, they were observed in various towns of this Telugu speaking areas of Madras presidency. That is, they wanted the Delhi to do something, right? So what happened here? He was on hunger strike. So when on 15 December 1952, one unfortunate thing happened. Potti Sri Ramalu, he died. He died because of the fast he undertook for 58 days. So he was on fast for 58 days. On 15 December 1952, he died. And now the protest aggravated. It was so intense, so widespread. The government has to listen to the demand. And finally, on 1st October 1953, that is after almost 1 year, and there was a new state which came into being, which was called as Andhra Pradesh. Today, how Andhra Pradesh came into being, you know now. And see, if you have 2 kids, you give one of the chocolate, the other one you are not giving the chocolate. What will happen to him? He'll say, why are you not giving me chocolate? Same thing happened with the other states or other people. They said, you have given them Andhra Pradesh, why are you not giving me my state? So the government made a commission, a States Reorganization Commission, Rajya Punargathan Ayog. So this was being set up, and in 1956 this commission submitted the report, and now the boundaries were formed, redrawn, and now the provinces of Assam, Bengali, Odia, Tamil, Malayalam, Kannada, Telugu, these are all the languages. So see, the largest Hindi speaking region, which was called the United Provinces, North India, it was being broken into several states. Uttar Pradesh became the UP, which was United Provinces. Madhya Pradesh came from Central Provinces. 1960 Bombay was basically two communities were there, Marathi and Gujarati. So the Marathi were given Maharashtra and Gujarati were given Gujarat. 1966, since Punjab was also a big state, it was divided into Punjab, that is Sikh majority, and Haryanvi. Haryanvi basically speaking Haryanvi and Hindi. Okay, so this is how the states were being made. Let me show you this picture. This is Indian provinces and princely states before 14 August 1947. So this, when we was just about to get the independence, this was the situation. So when we talk about Jammu Kashmir, when we talk about Eastern state, the problems there, the people, we don't go into the history. We just start talking about them, that they are bad people, Hyderabadis are bad people, Jammu Kashmiris are doing this. But it is not that, it is history. Those states were not with us. They came with us with certain written agreement. And now we have to honor that. So some of them came to us easily. Some of them were annexed. So these all pink were princely states. They were not with India. You have to go to Jammu Kashmir to understand Jammu Kashmir. You have to go to Hyderabad. You have to go to Manipur to understand what situation was there. Okay, because yellow was British India. This was under independence. What about these princely state? They were having all their autonomy, And one more picture. This is Indian states before 1 November 1956. And as I said, after 1956, there was a clear distinction. So Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, all these were made. This is a kind of view which we see. But this is a picture of, this is a map of 1975. You see, in 1975, this is the map which we see today. Almost this is the map which we see today. Okay. The only thing is the Uttar Pradesh, we have Uttarakhand also. Andhra Pradesh, we have Telangana also. With Madhya Pradesh, we have Chhattisgarh also. So several more states were formed. And because of the administrative convenience and because of the people who are wanting it, people were, raising voices because they have different culture, different from the place where they wanted to be fit in. Okay, so this map is from where we started and how did we get to this map. So please understand about what happened all through together. This is Chhattisgarh, Uttarakhand, and this is Telangana. So now the constitution was made, various features were there. It's time for the development. So how this planning for development took place? India was not in a good shape or condition. We were poor, poverty was too much. So first we have to lift ourselves, the people of India, out of the poverty. So we need to have some technical and industrial base. So this was one of the major objectives. So in 1950, government set up a planning commission, Yojana Ayog. Today we call it as a Niti Ayog. So the work of this planning commission will be to design and to execute the policies for India's economic development. In order to emancipate the level in terms of economy, the planning commission was designated the task of designing and executing the policies. Okay, so one thing was that who is Yojana Ayog or Niti Ayog, whatever you say, today it is Niti Ayog.
So it was being agreed upon that Indian economy model will be a mixed economy model. Mixed economy means the private players and the government both are going to work together. Means everything will not be in private hands or in government hand. Government and private, they all will work together. They will also have, all will have their own establishment, institution, industries. So private sector is going to play a very vital, important and a kind of helpful or a complementary role in increasing the production base and also for Rozgar, that is generating the employment, jobs for the people of the country. So which industries will be held by state, that is the Indian government, and which will be by the market, that is the private hand. And this was defined by this was the, say, responsibility of planning commission at that time, planning commission. So in 1956 what happened, there was a second 5-year plan. The first started in 1951, Panchvarshiya Yojana, 5-year plan. So this second 5-year plan, it majorly focuses on two things. First was the heavy industries, the iron and steel. We can call it as a steel because steel is formed by iron only. So the thrust was on heavy industries, iron and steel industries, ispat, Loha Ispat. So first was this. That is why we have all these TISCO and all these, different government firms also came into being. Then it came for dams, because everything was dependent on the agriculture, basically was dependent on monsoon, and the water were very important. Somewhere it was drought, somewhere it was flood. So state, that is the Indian government, not the state that we talked about today. This is state, we are talking about Indian state. So this picture is showing, this is a work going on at Gandhi Sagar Bandh. So this was one of the first of 4 dams which was built on Chambal River. 1960, it completed in Madhya Pradesh. One more picture I would like to highlight. This is a dam which is made on Mahanadi River. And this was majorly made to control the flow. Because as I said, that rivers were overflowing, there are somewhere drought, somewhere there are floods. So the bridges and dams, they became the major symbol of development of our country, that is the independent India. So pull, bridges and the dams which I am trying to present here. So I am going to show you some of the dams which are very important. Bhagla Nangal Dam. These are different on different rivers because of various reasons. Nagarjun Sagar Dam, then Tungabhadra, Hirakund, Damodar Valley project was also there. So there were various, after independence, various dams came up. And this was basically for water control, flood control, and this water is used for irrigation to control the heavy rains and also for recreation purpose. But there are certain things which are related to it which was not thought well before. So people have this perception also, or you can say people were saying that there are two things which are not being taken care of: agriculture and also the kids education, or you can say the primary education. This agriculture and primary education was not that much looked for, because these are the basic, because India is an agricultural economy and also we need our kids to study. So these what dams are made or the bridges were made, the environmental implication of these policies, which are essentially the economic policies, were not thought of, because the water comes in a dam, it comes with a lot of say soil and this gad, and finally it deposits there. So there are a lot of troubles which comes up. There are so many people which needs to be sent to some other place. So I'll show you a face here. She is called Mira Behan. She was an Anglo-Indian. She was very close to, or she was a disciple of Mahatma Gandhi ji. And she said in 1949, she said way back in 1949, which we are witnessing today. And she said, okay, science and machineries are good. and they will give us huge returns. But the problem is that it will imbalance or create imbalance in the nature. And the nature is deciding everything, but we cannot decide everything. We have to see the nature, and then only we have to go for any kind of, say, machinery or science. So we need the next generation also to survive, them to be healthy, and we want the ourselves to behave like a decent species. So this carbon, global warming, carbon footprints, these are increasing, and these are all result because of what we have done earlier. Not only India, all over the world, the phenomena is same. You see here, this is a picture of Jawaharlal Nehru. Now this is a Bhilai steel plant. This Bhilai steel plant was set up with the help of Soviet Union in 1959, and this was situated or located at a very backward rural area of Chhattisgarh. But now this area is one of the major railway station. If you start from Raipur, I'll just show you the idea. So basically, very various industrialization work was taking place. So this is Raipur, and just after 1 hour you will get Bhilai steel plant. Actually, there are two stations here. One is Bhilai and one is Bhilai steel plant. So all these areas were developed. So if you established or start a company or an industry, all the people who are around, they get benefited. The economy is what it takes a steep growth at that place. Now what happened here is, India got freedom after Second World War, and you remember 1939 to 1945, the Second World War was fought. Now India got independence in 1947, just after 2 years. So after 1945, the world was in a thought, everyone was in a thought that we need a central, say, organization which is called as United Nations. You know what Germany has did, and other allies and the other parties. So a United Nation was required at that time, and today also. So what happened here is, in 1945 it was being established, but this was still in infancy. It was just started, and in between 1950s and 1960s, these decades, we saw a great deal of Cold War between two different giants. They have ideology problems. They have different kind of military problems. So you see here, two people. If you are say staying as Padosi neighbor, you are not fighting, but you guys are in trouble. Means even if a tipping point comes, you will fight. So Cold War is that kind of thing. So USA and USSR, these were two key players, and there were, because of the roots of what has taken place in world wars, these all problems started. So USA along with its allies and USSR along with its allies, they had a military formation, or say they made a military alliance. So it was just a tip, whenever something happens, they may fight. So it was always there that maybe Third World War can take place. So what India did, it can go to either of these parties. But our Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, he was a visionary. He was a great visionary. He was not only the Prime Minister, he was the Foreign Minister as well, Videsh Mantri. So he said that we will follow a different foreign policy which is of non-alignment. Non-alignment means good nirpekshta. We will not align to any of these parties, both giant parties. We will be tatastha. We will be non-aligned. We will remain static. So Egypt, Yugoslavia, Indonesia, Ghana and India, these countries were leaders, and they formed a non-aligned movement that we will not go to any of these parties. But that doesn't mean that they are isolated from the world. India played a very vital role when the mediation was going on between America and Soviet alliances. So India took its role that it will not go for war or any kind of perception that I'm at this side. So you see here, Jawaharlal Nehru and this person is called Krishna Menon,
and he led the our representation. He was actually a representation he put up from 1952 to 1962, and he argued for that policy of non-alignment. And this is a picture of a meet at Bandung, Indonesia in 1955. So every country, Afro-Asian country which just got independence, they were coming from colonialism. They were talking about how to stop and how to recover from this Western domination. So that is how 29 newly independent states they participated in this famous conference, and they discussed about how to proceed further. So what happened? See, 2021 we will be celebrating our 75th Independence Day. On 15th August 2021 we are going to celebrate 75, that is 75th Independence Day. This I am trying to show the Republic Day, just to show that there is a difference between a Republic Day and a Independence Day. So this is how we have parades and everything on Republic Day. This Swadhinta Divas or Swatantra Divas or Independence Day. Now, have we fulfilled these constitution and everything? Have we fulfilled the aspiration of the country? See, very many of the observers when India was formed, they were saying that India is not going to survive as a single country. There were various people, observer you can say, expert you can say, that India is going to break up. It will be broken apart into various different parts. Some were in the argument that India will be under military rule. But you see, in 2019, we just had this 17th general elections, that is for Lok Sabha, MP election. So still India is going strong. We have free press. I am not talking about the Godi media. I am talking about the free press, the independent judiciary. So judiciary is not under government control. It is independent, and the press is also free. It is somewhat called as the fourth pillar of our democracy. But the problem is that there are still divisions. Untouchability, which is already being abolished by the constitution, we still have these Harijans, Dalits, especially the Muslims and Dalits. They are facing a lot of violence and discrimination because of the majority, because of the politics, because of certain party, the political parties. They just want to win, and why winning? They can just create any kind of religious difference or the caste wise difference. So Muslims and Dalits, they are facing the wrath of the different political games people are playing. Still the Dalits are not allowed at temples, the water resources, the parks, the public places. And since we are secular, our country is secular, there are political parties which create difference. They say that the Muslims are bad or the Dalits are bad, and finally the clashes of religious groups we see. The rich and poor difference is ever growing. I'll just show you picture. Before that, there are people who are having everything. They are sending their kids to private schools. They are going to foreign holidays. There are people who are below poverty line. You know $1.25, or you can say 100 rupees. A person who is not earning per day 100 rupees even, he is below poverty line. So there are majority of people in our country who are still under this poverty line. And there are, if you go to village, no work, urban area, all are living in slums. So India has been credited of the largest slums area. See, there is no education, there is no health. If you see here, this is Dharavi. These are the skyscrapers, and in between we have the world's largest slums, which is called Dharavi in Mumbai. You see how people are living. I'll just give you an example of Antilia. Ambani, he is actually the richest man of India, and he became the fourth richest person of the world in few months back. And this is Antilia, and just by the side of his Antilia, there are people living like this. He is earning crores in seconds, every second, and the people, even in order to feed them, they are not getting that money. So Republic of
India is not a great success. We can say that, but we can also say that this is not a failure. This is not a failure either. We didn't succeed what we started, why we got independence, what we wanted from this country, or what we wanted, the aspirations of the people. What happened in Sri Lanka? First, let me tell you about India. We are around 80% Hindus here, around 13 to 14% Muslims, and there are other minorities. So, majority is Hindu, minority is Muslims, but still we are united. There are certain parties which are dividing Hindus and Muslims. They are creating all these scenarios, but still we are together. But what happened in Sri Lanka and in Pakistan? Sri Lanka in 1956, when India was reorganizing the states on the basis of language, different language, same time Sri Lanka, at that time it was called as Ceylon. It introduced an act, the parliament introduced an act, and they said that Sinhala, let me tell you that 75% around are Sinhalese, that is the Sinhala people. And if I combine Sri Lankan and Indian Tamils, they are around 15%. So these 15% are minority in this area, the orange and yellow area. The green region is inhabited by the Sinhalas. Now the problem was, in 1956, Sri Lankan parliament, they passed a law and they said that the official language of the country would be Sinhala. That is, it will be their Rashtra Bhasha, the official language, either in school, college, public examination courts, only this language is going to work. Now the problem is, Tamil speaking minority, it's around 15%. They said, you are denying us from our language. You are trying to divide this country on the basis of language. Okay? We assure you that if you want division, you will get division. And this country will be torn. After that, what happened? 25 plus years. You might have heard about LTTE. This is Sri Lanka. You see the picture also. LTTE. And 25 plus years there was a civil war between the majority and the minority. And finally, thousands were killed in this tussle. Same thing Pakistan did. They imposed Urdu. Now Bangladesh, basically it came from Bengal only. So Muslim majority is there, but they are Bengali people. Bengalis and Muslim and a Sindh Muslim is different. Okay. So after 1971, a new country was born, and that was called Bangladesh. East Pakistan was made as Bangladesh. So if we would have imposed this Hindi on the southern part of India, what would happen? Same what happened in Sri Lanka and Pakistan. That is why when we created the linguist state, it didn't threaten our unity, but actually our unity was deepened. We all, the South Indians eat samosas, the North Indian eats masala dosa with all love, with all respect. So you see that India, because the culture we have, the way we are brought up, Hindu Muslims and every other minority, they live together. Just leaves are certain political parties, they are creating all kind of divisions, but in all, India is united. Okay, this is all about this topic. Thank you so much. Take care of yourself.